Hello, welcome, welcome. One second and we'll get started. I'm trying something new, so I want to make sure it's working. Okay, welcome to our You Can Move Abroad session. Happy Easter to those who celebrate. We are happy to be spending this day with you. So, what I'm going to talk about today is our own story of how and why we got moved abroad, the 6 stages that we've identified that everyone goes through in the process of moving abroad, how our app can help you at every stage at your move, and I'll take Q&A at the end about your own questions about moving abroad. We'll have a small group today, so we should be able to get to every question. So, why did we want to move abroad? It is a myriad of reasons, just like it probably is for you. And for me, it started when I was a very little girl. I know I look like a ghost child in the Wild West, but this is me when I was 5 or 6 years old. And I went to a very tiny evangelical school in a suburb of Birmingham. And at that school, we held France Week. And we had a little cafe and we learned some French words. And I fell in love immediately. And I knew there has to be something more to life than Huffman, Alabama. And I want to find it. So when I was came out of college, I decided to give living in France a try. This is a time before the internet. And so um, I had no idea how to go about it, but I decided to give it a try. And lo and behold, it is not as easy as you think to pick up and move to France. So this was something that was on a back burner for me for all of my life. In 2016, I had fallen in love with my partner, Brett Andrews, and we were living together. And the political strain and pressure in 2016 just made me feel like it was time to perhaps make a move. That said, we did not find a path for ourselves right away. And then in 2020, owing to the pandemic, we felt like we could be doing what we were doing from anywhere. And so we decided to get serious about the process. The first thing we did was go and visit Canada. You know, every American says if they don't like it in the US, that they'll just move to Canada. And the truth is, it didn't really feel like home to us, but also there wasn't a path. We actually decided to visit Seattle and Vancouver to try a different kind of state as well as another country. Ironically, we ended up staying in Amanda Knox's Airbnb. So, talk about your cautionary move abroad tales. But she is super lovely. We were very happy to spend time there. But nonetheless, neither of these places felt like home to us. We felt like fish out of water, and we didn't really have a path to move there as well. So in 2020, we decided to get serious about coming up with a plan that would genuinely help us make this move. We rented a little cabin. If you've ever heard of Talladega, Alabama, this town is so small, it is outside Talladega. And we rented a little cabin that had no cell service, no landline, no internet. And we just sat down and started trying to figure out what it was that we wanted, not just what we were leaving behind in the US, but what we wanted to move towards. And the first thing we did was figure out how we could do this. We found that we just didn't have the skills that people needed to get jobs abroad. I was in marketing. Brett at the time had been in catering, although over the course of the pandemic, he had reskilled to be a software developer. Nonetheless, he was still very early in his career, so he couldn't command the kind of opportunities that somebody could who had a lot of experience or degrees in the subject. So our idea was that for 10 years, we would save as much money as we could. And then I would retire a little bit early, maybe work on side projects, and Brett would be able to work remote at that point in time because he'd have 10 years experience. So with that plan in mind, we started making a list of what we were looking for in a new home. So what did we want for healthcare and cost of living and weather and human rights and so on. And when we got back home from the cabin, we started researching countries and matching them up with our criteria. And if a country matched up with our criteria, it got a point. And that system you probably are familiar with because if you've taken the Expatsy test, the work that we did in the cabin this weekend is what became the Expatsy test. Brett has dropped into the chat our retreat guide so you can do this same exact process on your own anytime, anywhere. So we were going to visit 10 countries over 10 years to find our favorite place and then move to the one that we liked the best. We ended up visiting Mexico first. I am embarrassed to admit I had never been to Mexico and I didn't know that much about our closest neighbor. Brett had been one time to Cancun with an ex-wife a million years before. But we decided to visit Mexico first because I had come across some people on TikTok who showcased their life here in Merida, Yucatan, and it seemed really appealing to us. So we visited Mexico in January of 2022, and we were going to visit 9 more countries over 9 more years. At the end of this trip, I said, I can't wait. I don't want to wait 9 years to move. Why don't we move here now, figure out how to do it? And then if we decide we want to move to another place later, we can. But I don't want to wait 9 more years in the US. So we started to brainstorm how we could go sooner. And my thought was that there had to be other people like us who were going through this process and weren't sure how to get started. And so if we could teach them the process that we were going through, that perhaps it was something we could turn into a business. So we built the original version of the Expatsy test. We're on the 3rd version of the test now. If you've taken it, if you took it a long time ago, it's a good idea to go and take it again. And the idea is that we will match you with 10 countries that potentially you could move to. It's meant to be a thought starter so that you can think about what you're looking for and have language to talk about anyone else who might be moving with you. From there, we started to promote the test on social media so that other people might take it and eventually help us figure out how we might make money helping people move abroad. One of the first things people started doing after they were following us and connecting with us on social media channels like our Facebook group, which is called the Expatsy Fam, is they wanted to take scouting trips like what we had done to Vancouver and to Merida. So we polled the group and they most wanted to visit Spain and Portugal. So we planned our first group scouting trips for 2 years ago and we took 30 strangers all over both countries. Now we have 60 group scouting trips in 2026 and hopefully more next year. And we started to offer consultations where we help walk people through our process, although in the beginning it was just consultations with us. So today, our consultations are with hundreds of people. We have professionals in immigration, healthcare, finance, taxes, and living in different destinations all over the world. So I think of myself as your triage nurse. I like to meet with people and find out what their needs are and then get them to the right people. But I'm not a specialist. I don't know everything about everything. I know a little bit about everything. So keep that in mind. In most cases, we will recommend you to our beloved partners. Okay, Once we started helping people move abroad, we identified that there were people in very many stages of the process, and we had gone through these stages ourselves. It took some time to kind of figure out what those stages were and what the correct order was for them. But this is what our 6 stages are: ideation, planning, exploration, paperwork, logistics, and settling in. And today I'm going to go through these 6 stages, the questions you need to ask, what you need to know, how much it costs at each stage, and so on. The ideation stage is fantasy land. So this is one day. One day I'm going to retire and have margaritas on the beach. One day I'm going to live in a walkable city and I'm going to have universal health care. This was me from the time that we had Paris Week at my first grade, all until the time that I started to get serious in 2016. At this stage in the process, you haven't done anything except maybe consume inspirational content, and that's okay. At this stage, the question to ask yourself is, do I have the basics? This was something that was very hard to know when I tried to run away to France, is what it actually takes to move abroad. But now it is not nearly so hard to know. The basics are these. The first thing is that you have at least $10,000 to put into this process. There are people who might go cheaper in the beginning, but they will eventually have those costs. It doesn't mean that you will have them all up front, but ultimately, between all the things that you are doing, you need at least 10,000. For some people who are taking dogs who are brachycephalic, meaning they have the little short stubby noses. I think I say that right. I don't even know. It might cost more because you might take a charter plane. If you're taking a whole household full of stuff, if you are moving a number of people, if you are doing a golden visa, you can absolutely spend a lot more than 10,000. But this is the baseline. This is the basic. And if you don't have that, how do you get it? It's okay if you don't have it today, but that becomes your first goal. Also, do you have a way to support yourself abroad? We'll talk about this more in planning, but that is ultimately how you are going to get abroad. A number of countries offer hundreds and hundreds of different visa paths, but they are all for people based on how they earn money. The exception are things like claiming asylum or going as a refugee, and that path is not open to the vast majority of Americans. The next thing is, are you ready emotionally? I shared an episode of The Daily Show on TikTok today where they talk about digital nomads moving to Mexico City, and they managed to interview someone who is not at all mindful of why she's there, does not see her role in things, is not paying attention to the people around her, does not measure her impact, isn't is it going through legal residency, all of these things. So are you ready to go and assimilate into a culture? Are you resilient? Are you tolerant? Are you able to ask for help when you need it? Because it is very hard to cowboy yourself all through this process. And if you're not ready emotionally, that's okay too. But how do you get there? And what are your fears? Are you nervous about leaving adult kids or senior parents? What are the things that you're afraid of? Learning a language, having enough money, and how do you overcome those? The biggest obstacle and mistake here is just not starting. Thinking, I can't do it. This is for someone who is not me. Other people have something I don't. And the truth is, our tagline is, why not you? Because we're incredibly ordinary, and most of the people we help move are ordinary. It doesn't mean they aren't fun and special, but we are not only moving superstars. We want you to be able to do it too. Most of the obstacles you will face are inside. It is not the paperwork. It is not the finance. It is you and your fears of not being able to do the paperwork or not being able to save the money or earn the money. Um, Gaining consensus in your family, of course, can be challenging if you have multiple people who would be moving abroad with you. Being healthy enough. It doesn't mean that you can't move abroad with a pre-existing condition or disability. In fact, a large number of our clients move abroad using disability. And that's how they move to other countries, but making sure you are finding the right health match in the country that you're going to. For example, in Spain, you have to have private health insurance. Before you move there, the private health insurance is picky. So don't get fixated on Spain if you can't qualify for that insurance. And of course, like I mentioned, having enough money. The other mistakes, like I mentioned, not starting, thinking that you can't do it because you can, and finally overlooking the basics. This is rare, but occasionally people will say, you know what, I'm headed to Belize and I'm going to sort it out after I get there. And I will tell you, you are not going to sort it out after you get there. You need to put the groundwork in place before you go. The tools we have on our platform, as I mentioned, our new and improved expatsy test. We have assessments for both your expat readiness and your fears. And then we have exercises from a professional counselor to help work you through the process. And she's somebody who's gone through the process herself. We have a forum and we have a number of experts. You can meet with me. We have move abroad coaches. We have emotional coaches, people who can help you with healthcare and finances. By the way, I forgot to mention that there is a Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. If you think of questions along the way, feel free to drop them in there. And if you see a question that applies to you, you can also upvote it so that it will rise to the top of the list, and I'll answer questions at the end. So the next stage is planning, and that's figuring out where you can go. This is absolutely the start of me and Brett in the cabin, which is figuring out what the visa paths were and what was available to us. These are essentially the paths. You can go as a tourist. You're kind of flying by the seat of your pants for the length of time that you do it. People absolutely do it, but it is no guarantee. You can't guarantee that you can stay in a country. You can't guarantee how long someone will give you on a tourist visa. Just because a country offers Americans 6-month tourist visas doesn't mean that you won't cross and they give you 2 weeks instead. It is at their discretion. The retirement path is really better termed a passive income path because you don't always need to actually be retired. In some countries, such as Spain, you can't work if you are on a passive income visa. In other countries like Portugal, you can. You can work locally or online. And in some place like Mexico, you could work online. There are also usually not minimum ages for retirement paths. In some cases, like in Southeast Asia, there might be an age of like 45 or 50, but in most countries, it's 18. There is also a path for people who work remotely for US companies or who are self-employed, like me and Brett. In our case, our jobs were remote, but they were not going to allow us to work from abroad. And so we started our own business. To be a skilled worker, you can go to a number of countries. We'll talk about a framework for that in a moment, but you can Google critical skills list Ireland, critical skills list Australia to see what that country is looking for in particular. Most often it is healthcare, tech, and skilled trades. You can go as a student. This is a pretty well guaranteed path if you get accepted to a college or university in another country. However, it is not a permanent path. You are allowed to stay for as long as you are studying, and in some cases, you get a year or two after you finish school to look for work locally. That said, it is a great way to enter a country, get your foot in the door, and start to build ties. You might even fall in love or find the perfect job. Investor paths, also called golden visas, are paths where people can go by investing in a country in some way. Different countries offer it, and those countries have different rules. Sometimes it can be by buying a home. Sometimes it can be by starting a business. Sometimes you need to invest in a fund or make a donation. Most often, people who take an investor path are also retirees or remote workers of some kind. This is an excellent path for people who can't go today. So most often our clients who are doing a golden visa path say, I have a freshman and a junior in high school, and so I don't want to move until they're in college. Or I retire in 3.5 years and I'm going to move then. But they don't want doors to be closing on them. And visa paths do change. It's not personal, it's just countries offer visas when they need something to support their own economy. And if they no longer have that need, a door can close. Absolutely. It happens all the time. When you do an investor visa, your money is kind of doing the work for you instead of you being a resident there yet. In all of these other cases, when you get a visa, you have to go. You have to go or you lose that access. In some cases, Mexico is an exception to that, but we talk about that another time. But in most cases, you have to stay 183 days a year so that you become a tax resident and pay taxes. When you are an investor, that is rarely the case. You can go through ancestry. So some people who have certain heritage going back different numbers of generations can qualify for citizenship by ancestry in different countries. Canada has just released their path, which allows people with almost any Canadian ancestry to qualify. Although if you have that, I would certainly apply sooner rather than later and won't be available forever. And then there's family reunification. This can be falling in love and getting married, or it can be sending the person in your family who has the easiest path abroad and then reunifying with them on the other side. We have a rule of thumb that we use for our visa paths. If you aren't sure what kind of visas you qualify for or what kind of countries they would lead to. In general, there are wealthy countries, middle class countries, impoverished countries. In wealthy countries, they need labor. They need young people who don't need a lot of health care to come in and take jobs and pay into the Social Security system for their aging population. So some examples of this are Canada, UK, Ireland, the Nordic countries, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Japan, South Korea, UAE. There are some exceptions. You can be a retiree in Ireland. You can be a digital nomad in UAE. But in most cases, they want you to come and work and be young. Then in the middle class countries, they're more interested in capital. They have younger populations and they want to keep jobs local for their citizens. But if you come in and spend your pension or your US remote income or you invest, then you are seeding money into the economy and they can raise the salaries of people in those roles without you taking a job. So keep that in mind. This often has an impact on multi-generational families. So if you're here and you are thinking about, our grandparents want to come along, they're retired. We want to come and I need a skilled job. My spouse works remote. We have a kid in college and a kid in high school. These are different visa paths. And so that's something to keep in mind is there really aren't easy options. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but keep in mind that sometimes you might have to go to different nearby countries. And one thing to remember is that Europe is kind of like the US. You can live in a different country and it's not that different from living in another state. Okay. When you're in the planning stage, the questions to ask yourself, what's my timeline and my budget? Do I need to adjust my timeline or my budget to match the realities of my visa path? What kind of visas do I qualify for or could I qualify for? You don't have to choose from just what you could get today, but you need a path to get to the visa type that you're looking for. Some of those, you could get a remote job. Do you qualify to get a local job? Should you start a business? Do you have enough money to retire? A lot of people retire early because, for example, you might feel like you need $2 million to retire in the US, but you only need $650,000 to retire in Spain, for example. Should I study abroad? Can my whole family come? The obstacles If you are not already somebody who has an income stream that will allow you to move abroad, it is getting that done. If you don't have that, you're going to spend the most time in this stage of the process. Brett and I did. We did not have a path to earn money abroad. We had to sort that out for ourselves, and then we had to build our business enough to where it's successful. Now, that said, we did not have to replace our American salaries with expatsy. We just knew that we needed to earn collectively $3,000 a month. And once we earned $3,000 a month, we would be able to live well in Mexico. So keep that in mind. If you're a retiree and you have a pension, or if you're self-employed and you have income, you'll sail right through this stage. You'll barely, just a blink in your eye. Expenses at this stage are also relatively small. You might want job coaching or skills training. But the biggest mistake that we see people make here is choosing a visa that doesn't fit what they want for their lives just to get to a certain country. You know, for us, when we first started this process and we were considering the visa paths, we thought about getting a PhD in a country like Norway. And the truth is, neither one of us wanted a PhD. So we were going to draw straws and the loser would get the PhD. Now, I have a lot of admiration for people with PhDs, but it just wasn't the path for us. We're entrepreneurial. We're not great students. And so we were going to pursue that path just as a way out of the US. It made so much more sense for us to move abroad on an entrepreneurial visa. So that's ultimately what we did. The tools we have here on our platform include all sorts of information about visa paths, our workshops, job search resources. Brett, will you drop in the chat how to get to our job search resources? And our experts to help. You know, we have our Move Abroad coaches that you can meet with every month to keep you going. We have people who can help you start your own business. And of course, we have our visa partners. The next stage is exploration, and this is the most fun stage. You know, we say that if moving abroad were like planning a wedding, this is the stage where you get to taste all the wedding cakes. This is a group from one of our group scouting trips. This was in Puerto Vallarta, and it's one of the most fun aspects is to visit these locations in person and see how you like them. Not everyone visits a place before they move there, but it has such a huge impact on how successful you'll be with your move. It also helps you realize what you are moving towards, and it sustains you when you are going through the hard work of going through all your things, packing and moving, dealing with the paperwork and the later stages that we're going to talk about. It helps you to go, okay, if I can just get this box packed, I'm going to be living in paradise. So the questions to ask during exploration: where should I visit? How much time do I need to do it? Should the whole family come, or can we just send a scout? What do I do while I'm there? What do I do that's different from being on vacation? What if I don't like it? What if I don't like any place I visit? What will taxes, healthcare, and schools be like? A big thing to know about exploration is that whereas in the planning stage, you're figuring out where you can go, in the exploration stage, you're figuring out where you want to go, where you want to go. And so things that are not required, but they can add to your quality of life, like taxes, healthcare, and schools, you'll assess at this stage. And how do I know when I found my home? To be honest, all of this, I have a lot of falling in love type analogies when it comes to moving abroad, but there are a lot of similarities to it. And a big part of it is vibes. You know, it's sort of like you'll know it when you see it, like it is when you fall in love. The obstacles here are just getting travel planned, planning the trip, getting PTO, finding the resources you need to answer some of these in-depth questions. There is a cost here. This is where there actually start to be costs, although it's fun costs, right? Everybody loves to travel. You wouldn't be here. The biggest mistakes we see people make, one is treating it like a vacation. You know, it isn't. On our group scouting trips that we host, our rule is no churches, no landmarks, no museums. It doesn't mean that you won't pass one by, have one pointed out, have a quick photo op, but we focus on neighborhoods, markets, pharmacies, what life is really like in these places, real estate. Ideally, you visit in both the best season and the worst season. That doesn't always work out, but if you can, it's great. For us, we visited Merida in January of 2022. Amazing time to visit Merida. It is perfect weather, 85 degrees, sunny, everything is great. So we came back in August so that we could experience what it is like when it is miserably hot and humid and so on, and figure out if we can handle it. The other big mistake, and this is a mistake we made ourselves, is doing the exploration stage before planning. That is what we did when we went to Seattle and Vancouver. Yeah, it was great. It was fun. It was nice, but it got us nowhere on our move abroad journey. And it was an expense that we could have put elsewhere. I'm not sad that we visited those places. It taught us a lot about ourselves and what we were looking for, but we could not have moved there under the best circumstances. So the tools we have, you may know that we do have these group scouting trips. This is a group here in Ericeira, which is west of Lisbon, lovely town. We also have a DIY scouting trip planner that you can use to plan your own trips if you choose not to go on a group trip. We have country guides. We have dozens and dozens and dozens of webinars from our experts, and we have exercises that you can do in the app. We have healthcare reports for a couple dozen countries that will tell you what the healthcare system is like and how to use it. We have our forums so you can talk to each other. And of course, we have our coaches. We have local guides in a number of areas so that you can meet with them and say, what's the straight poop? What is it like on the ground there? And we have tax and finance. One thing a lot of people ask is, who can I talk to that will tell me what my taxes will be in Italy versus France versus Spain versus Portugal? And the truth is, there isn't anyone. It is not even legal for a tax professional in Europe to do those scenarios for you for multiple countries. What we recommend instead is you talk to our finance partner like Beacon, who can give you a big picture perspective. And then once you narrow it down in the exploration stage, you meet with our expert in multiple countries to talk about your tax liability in those places. Now, keep in mind, in Latin America, you will often not have any tax liability. Okay, paperwork stage. This is no one's favorite. There is nothing fun about the paperwork stage. It's like doing your taxes. But the good thing is, at this point in the process, it's real. You are really, really, really moving. And so that's an important thing to keep in mind. The questions people ask here are, can I do this myself or do I need help? And you know better than anyone else. In some countries, you do actually have to use help. But as far as we're concerned, we think almost everyone should use help. It is processes that are in different languages. The bureaucracy is confounding. And it's a process you have never done before and will never do again, likely. And so we think it's worthwhile to talk to an expert. And I'll tell you about our mistakes in this stage as well. In some cases, you might need health insurance or a bank account or a lease before you even apply. You might need documents to be apostilled or get background checks. You might need documents for your pets if you're taking your pets. You need to know how to get a consulate appointment. Do you do it in the US or do you do it in the new country? And it depends on the country you're moving to as well as the visa path. The obstacles here are just understanding the steps, getting your paperwork together, enduring the bureaucracy, shifting laws and requirements. One of our colleagues, Stephanie, just moved to Porto, Portugal, and her process changed 9 times as she was getting her visa. She endured it, but you need to know that that can happen. She just had to go and get a different piece of paperwork here and there. So you will have real expenses at this stage. How much your expenses are depend a lot on what country you're moving to. But if you use an attorney or a relocation specialist, you'll have costs. We do have someone who can help you gather all your documents if you need. You may need services that you can't use yet. For example, in Portugal, you have to have a year-long lease before you visit the consulate. And so that apartment is going to sit empty while you wait for your paperwork, which is frustrating, of course, and you may have bed expenses. One big mistake that I don't have here is sometimes people want to do this stage too early. They feel the need to start working on this process, but they don't want to do the earlier stages that require more brain power. So they don't want to do the planning. They don't want to do the exploration. They want to do something they can do from their couch, and getting their birth certificate together and things like that is something they can do from their couch. But keep in mind, there's nothing wrong with getting some paperwork together, but just keep in mind that some of this paperwork expires. If you're getting anything apostilled, if you're getting a background check, it will expire. So if you get those pieces too soon, you may need to get them again. The other mistakes we see people make trying to save money by doing it themselves. We made this mistake ourselves. We had originally gotten our paperwork done in Mexico. It was very easy. I mean, for Mexico in Atlanta, it was very easy, but it expired while we went back to the drawing board to start our business for expats. And so we decided to go through a process that ended up expiring. We waited too long and we lost opportunities. If we had just used our own partner, Shasta, who was very new at the time, then we saved ourselves a good bit of money and time. Services we have at this stage include relocation packages, document services. We do have webinars, resources, and checklists. We have our forum, our coaches, and of course, we do have immigration attorneys and relocation specialists. One of our favorite things about Expansy Go is that you can purchase from these partners directly on the app so that you don't have to send thousands of dollars to a stranger in another continent. Stage 5 is logistics. This is a photo of our cat Tooth, who had escaped from her carrier on our 8-day drive from Birmingham to Merida. But this is the process of figuring out what to do with all the physical elements that you're taking with you, your pets, your stuff. The big questions here: do I rent or sell my home in the US? Should I rent or buy a home abroad? How do we find one? What of all my stuff am I going to keep, sell, toss, store, donate? And you may have a lifetime worth of stuff in your home. So figuring out what to do with all of it. How do we move money or pets? How do we set up utilities and get started? The obstacles here are the emotional labor and decision making and the physical aspects of sorting all of your stuff. You know, for me, we ended up doing it in 3 weeks. We had big plans to sort through our things over time. And when it came down to the wire, we pretty much sold, donated, tossed, or stored everything we had in 3 weeks. Also, the process of renting or buying abroad. The expenses are real at this stage as well, and it depends a lot on how much stuff you're moving. So you might have a moving company, you might need to pay customs fees at the border, literal plane tickets or other travel for people. If you have costs for moving your pet, you know, Stephanie flew 2 French bulldogs through Bark Air, and that has a significant cost to it, and any setup costs for getting your housing together. Even for us, we drove, which is about as cheap a way as you can do it to be able to drive in our own US plated car. But even still, we had 8 nights of Airbnbs plus 2 weeks of Airbnb after we got to Merida. We had the gas to drive 2,700 miles and we had tolls. So I guess all in all, it probably cost us about $3,000 to get us and all of our things to Merida. The biggest mistakes here: taking too much stuff. You know, take as little as you can. If you aren't sure, if you aren't ready to let go of something, put it in storage for a year and see if you can part with it at the end of that year. Not preparing for customs, which exists in some places you go. Buying a home too soon. We think it's a great idea to wait for a year before you buy anything so that you can be sure that you have moved to the right place, that you like living abroad, that you're in the right city, the right neighborhood. and not checking tax laws before deciding when to sell your home. For example, if you move to Spain and you become a tax resident, you will owe capital gains on the sale of your home. And that is, we're very pro paying paying your taxes, but I think that's a tax that nobody would want to pay. So at this stage, we have, again, our webinars and checklists. We have our forum. We do have international movers, pet movers, and real estate, and we will be adding more real estate services very soon. We also have people who can help you with downsizing. The last stage is settling in, and this is the rest of your life. It is taking this brand new to you place and making it feel like your home. This is us at our first Halloween in Merida. Brett is absolutely roasting in a 96-degree night in that onesie. The big question people ask here is just, what now? I did it. I've been through this whole process. It was laborious. It took us 8 years. Our dream is that we can help you do it in 6 months or a year or 2 years or whatever time makes sense to you because of all the things that we have learned along the way. But once you get there, you feel like the dog that caught the car. And so, you've found your home. What do you do now? Where do I make friends? How do I get integrated? How do I find important providers like physicians? Who files my taxes after you've been here a certain amount of time? The obstacles here, language barrier is real. A lot of us will move to places that are not English speaking, and a lot of us are monoglots, famously. I would give anything to go back in time and have someone teach me Spanish when I was a little bitty girl, because it is not easier at this stage of life. That said, if you are if your livelihood doesn't depend on it, if you're moving as a remote worker, a retiree, or an investor, it is so much easier. You can take your time. We're learning Spanish as we go. We go to class, we learn a little bit at a time, and we know that we'll learn it eventually. And it's so good for you. It's so good for your brain, to your gray matter, to be making all those new synapses. Another obstacle is just being a newbie and having expenses you don't expect. Example I use is trying to buy groceries. I like to save money on groceries, but I didn't know how much anything cost. I did not know how to convert peso. It was like 16 and a half pesos to $1. And I didn't know metric. So if I picked up a pack of ground beef, 422 pesos, is it a good deal? I got no idea, but let's just cross our fingers. So you might have costs around that, and things like language classes. The biggest mistakes we see people making here is not giving themselves time to adjust and being impatient with themselves. Our colleague Amy, who helps people move to Merida, says it takes about 5 years before you're really, really, really integrated and you start to live like a local. I think that sounds fair. Brett and I have been here about 2 years. We have loved every day of it. We have not regretted a single day of living in Mexico. But listen, we don't know what's going on half the time, and that's part of it. I was thinking about this recently. I come from a small town, and knowing what's going on is real currency. Having the gossip, whether it is about people or whether it is about, oh, they're opening a new Piggly Wiggly down by the First Baptist Church. That is, you giving that up in another place. We never know what's going on. It's always a holiday we didn't anticipate. And so we learn over time. So finding that fun is important. At the same time, don't expect it to be like back home. It's not. It's a different country. That's why you left. And so embrace both the positives and the negatives of being in a new place. At this stage, we have culture coaches and concierge services and language classes. You can even take classes from our instructor, Miss Rosa, on our app, and she's wonderful. So I want to briefly walk you through what some of the facets of our platform are so that you can see them. She says confidently. There we go. So if you've taken the new version of the Expatsy test and made a account on the platform, you can see your dashboard here. There are 3 tiers of membership. There's a free membership, and you get a lot of services. There is a $19 a month membership where you get a lot more resources and info. And then there is a $99 a month membership. If you have that tier, you get a monthly session with a Move Abroad coach and you get discounts on Move Abroad con tickets, trips, relocation packages, and so on. So most often people start with a free membership. They upgrade to a $19 membership when they're ready to start entering the planning stage, and they convert it to a $99 membership when they enter the exploration stage and they're starting to purchase services. So this is what your dashboard looks like. You can see what destinations you're considering. You can see upcoming events. You can see the stages up at the top and about how much time we estimate at each stage. If you click into a stage, you can see tasks. I have some developer mode sections that you won't see, but you can see, for example, videos from Rachel, who will teach you how to measure your expat readiness. You can meet with her. You can watch her webinars. You can take a quiz, and you'll get special content based on your results of the quiz. In the planning stage, you'll see things related to your potential visa paths. For me, for example, I have digital nomad and self-employment and investment. And so I can watch relevant webinars here to get started on those. Under experts, I can see our partners. We have an amazing team of partners in different countries who can help you with visas, housing, logistics, and more. You can sort or narrow them down over here, or you can search. You can see our local guides, who are people who do one-on-one meetings, most often related to their locations, but sometimes related to things like work or culture. And you can see our Move Abroad coaches, so you can book time with any of them. Under trips, you can see our upcoming group scouting trips and book any of those. You can also join a free Q&A session to learn more about the trips, or you can use our DIY tool to plan your own. Under events, you can see upcoming events, including Move Abroad Con. Under community, you can see what folks are chatting about and talk to each other. You can find groups to join. You can see that there are 25,000 folks on the platform to talk to. Under resources, you can see past webinars and different guides. The ideation stage files are available to everyone in the free account, and the rest are available to people on pro accounts. You can see our country guides. I like to use Costa Rica as an example. We have different webinars. We have partners, community groups, country information, and so on. You have your workspace where you can see stuff related just to you, like your journal entries and your documents. And also we have the new opportunity to work with Expatsy by joining our affiliate program. So if you are a realtor, a financial planner, a travel agent, or you're just somebody who has a lot of friends who also are considering moving abroad, you can learn all about Expatsy and share info with them and earn fully remote income. All right. So our next steps are, one thing you can do is come to my Move Abroad Action Workshop, which I also do on Sundays about an hour after this, where we work through actual strategies and plans for your own move. You can start to meet with a Move Abroad coach. For example, Shasta, we have several others, and they'll meet with you every month to talk about what you got done last month and what you need to get done next month to make your move happen. And we have Move Abroad Con. Move Abroad Con is our flagship event. It's coming up in just a month in San Diego. And at Move Abroad Con, we bring about 50 experts to meet with you one-on-one personally. There are also going to be 28 talks where you can learn how to move to Portugal, how to move to Spain, how to move to Italy, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, and a number of other countries, plus taxes, healthcare, finances, how to move your pets, how to get citizenship by ancestry, and so on. It is the absolute best way to kick off your move. We highly recommend it. We have the event will be at the Hard Rock Hotel in San Diego, and we have a room block there for discounted rooms. There will be hundreds and hundreds of people just like you, and we'll also facilitate lunch gatherings with folks who are solo travelers or retirees or nomads or other groups. So it is without a doubt the best, fastest, most fun way to get started on your move. There is not a remote version of Move Abroad Con. We do a virtual event in the fall, but on this event, everything is about meeting each other one-on-one, so we don't do a remote option. Okay, and with that, I am going to answer your questions. Diana says, can I maintain my online part-time job coaching with a long stay visa in France? Diana, this is a perfect question for our partners Easy Start, or with Easy Start. I started to recommend a Move Abroad coach, but she actually is full of clients right now. So I would meet with them. The short answer is yes, there is a self-employment path with the long stay visa, but there's a little more to it than that. But the short answer is yes. You mentioned X amount needed per month to have enough to live in Mexico. 2 questions on that. Is that income or after taxes? How do you know the amount a person may need in another country? Yeah, Jay. So listen, my 3,000 was a wild ballpark, but it was after taxes. It is not what you need to qualify to live in Mexico. Let me make that clear. You need more than that to qualify to live in Mexico, or you can show savings. But in my case, that's what I felt like we needed to spend to live every month. I will be honest with you, we spend a good bit less than that on our actual expenses, although we do treat ourselves. How much you may need in another country, I would work through the retreat guide, because that's where you can start to estimate your personal expenses. Because the truth is, everybody is so different. You know, Brett and I, we don't drive a lot, so we don't spend a lot on gas. We do like to go out to eat, but we really just do that once a week. I like to get whatever ingredients I want. Like I said, I'm frugal. So it really depends on you and what you like to do. And of course, we like to travel. However, at this point, we are so points oriented that we can pay for a decent amount of it through points. Do you know if any countries in Europe require vaccine records? If we don't have them, is it sometimes the answer to be vaccinated another time? Jay, I'm not sure. I would talk to your provider for the country in question, because I think it probably depends. My guess is probably, this would be my guess, is that there are probably no vaccine records needed unless you're enrolling in school. Do you have resource lists for US-based companies hiring abroad or services that assist in helping find jobs? Not at this time. Here is what I do have. If you go to Brett, will you put that in the chat again if you didn't already, about going to resources and jobs? We do have some job boards that are specifically for certain countries, especially in Europe. And so there are job boards there. We also have our partners for Australia and New Zealand. They occasionally know about jobs, but most often they are working with you on your eligibility and your visas. We aspire to have job resources, but because there are 194 countries and thousands upon thousands of job roles, there is no one international recruiter. So that's going to be something that we work on as a whole new initiative, where we get every recruiter in every country one at a time, tech recruiter in Ireland and a nurse recruiter in the Netherlands. And so what we do have is, at the Move Abroad Action Workshop, we have a way that we can work through what a job search strategy might look like for you based on your specific needs. Brett, can you say, we're trying broadcasting live on YouTube. I think it's working. Brett, do you mind looking and just double checking and seeing if there are questions there? I presume no for our first time, but I don't want to leave.
There are no questions on YouTube.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. It's a brand new thing that we're trying. Well, y'all, thank you so much for being here with us today on this holiday. We appreciate you. We do recommend that you join the Expatsy fam and that you start chatting in the community forum on our side. It's taken a little time to get conversations going, but we are hopeful for that. If you have things you need from us, let us know. We want to really help you on this journey and get you moved. Also, here's a sneak peek. If you use the code, hold on. I believe it is Friends50. You can save $50 on Move Abroad con tickets. Okay, y'all take care. Have a wonderful week, and we'll talk again soon.